Amen, amen. That was actually a pretty good song. We were bumping to that. Oh man, welcome guys to 97.3 Oasis Radio Station, your one and only Spanish radio station of all of the CSRA. Thank you guys so much for joining in and logging in on our Facebook Live and our radio app. I'm sorry, you can download the radio app on the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. Please feel free. We are always having programs throughout the week.
That's true.
I'm so sorry. I've had like 2 weeks of break. So, oh my gosh, thank you guys so much for joining in. We are back. Man, how have you been, JB?
You know, the word of the Lord.
That's a good way to start it.
It says that there are hills and that there are valleys.
That is a good way to put it.
These are the valleys.
I feel that. I feel that 100%. I'm pretty sure a lot of us understand that. But no, man, I'm glad to hear that at least you're still firm, regardless of, what you may be going through, throughout the week or even at this moment. Man, it's really been like one hectic 2 weeks, man.
Would you say that you're in the valley too?
I would say I am in the trenches, man.
Ooh.
I'm in the lowest of the valley, man. It's been a rough 2 weeks. I am running on fumes, but we're here. God is giving us the strength, to preach the word that He wants to speak through us,
That's
and we're gonna go with it.
We are.
Okay, so tonight's topic is about forgiveness.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I love that topic.
It's almost majestic when you think about it.
It's almost too good to be true.
I like that. I like the way you put it, and it's interesting because forgiveness is something that's not really talked about much, specifically in society today. How everything is going on in society, everything that we are enduring and going through. It's hard to really think about there ever being forgiveness when you look out into this world. You look at what's going on in the world today, and it's nice to really bring that back up, because it's easy for us to forget about that, for us to lose track, lose heart of what forgiveness really is all about.
Yeah.
And that's really what we wanted to talk about today.
Yeah.
I wanted to start it off obviously with what is the literal definition of forgive. I tried searching forgiveness, and that was utterly pointless for me to look up. It was to forgive. And I'm okay, so what does it mean? So I had to look up forgive, and the definition of forgive is to stop feeling angry or resentful towards someone for an offense, flaw, or mistake. And it's an interesting definition. I never really thought of, the word forgive to have that kind of definition. And it's just funny because, what I like, it says to stop feeling, and it's just saying to stop. There's no, it's very vague. It doesn't really give a good instructions on how to actually forgive.
It's truth.
That's just kind of it was just to stop, stop feeling what you're feeling. That's it. That's that's really not how it goes.
It's not.
And it's so funny because that's just how a lot of people see it today. That's how the world sees it today. And, but that's not what God intended it for it to be. That's not what God wanted us to see it as. So now I wanted to move on to the biblical definition of what forgiveness is. And I actually wanted to base it off of Matthew 18. And Matthew 18, which is, it was like a slap to the face to me.
We love that.
To really, to really think about, because it was just, Jesus dives so deep into this one chapter, the whole chapter itself, talking about what, forgiveness truly and really means.
Yeah.
And hold on, I'm sorry, I lost it. Maybe I did this wrong. Hold on. I think I might have. Oh,
I found it.
You found it?
Yeah.
I think I lost it.
Matthew
oh my gosh.
18, verse 21.
It was 21. I should have written it down. Thank you. Okay, so then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. And he continues on. He says, therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And he began the settlement. A man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered him that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. At this, the servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. But when the servant went out and he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 silver coins, he grabbed him, began to choke him. Pay back what you owe me, he demanded. His fellow servant fell on his knees and begged him, be patient with me, I will pay it back. Mm-hmm. And it says, but he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. And that is something that's just like, man, that's crazy. You know, when you read further on, it literally says, you know, when the king finds out, he had the man imprisoned because of the fact that the king was willing to forgive him of his debt, but he wasn't willing to go out and forgive someone else for their debt.
Yep.
And Jesus said that is what it means to be in the kingdom. You can't, you know, in order for you to forgive, and in order for you, like, you need to be able to, you know, you reach forgiveness from the Father. And once you reach forgiveness from the Father, you have to be willing to give it to someone else. Yeah. And you can't just receive forgiveness from the Father and not be willing to give it back. Mm-hmm. That's essentially everything that we are given from God through our everyday lives. You know, whether it's love, whether it's patience, kindness, everything that God, you know, feeds us and feeds into our spirit, we are meant to put it back into the world, because that is us portraying the image of Christ unto the world of who he is. Mm-hmm. And it's something so interesting to think about, because it really, you know, in all honesty, that's just kind of like the complete opposite of what a lot of us as Christians, I'm not even talking about the world, a lot of us as Christians really do. And and this, you know, this topic I think is something that's very heavy more on Christians than it is on, you know, on the rest of the world. Definitely. Because as Christians, we are meant, like I said, we are meant to be that light. We are meant to be that inspiration to others of what it means to forgive and what it means to love, what it means to really be what God has called us to be. Yeah. And when we're not willing to do that with ourselves and towards others, then how can we properly portray the image of Christ? Mm-hmm. And instead, we're just giving them a false imitation, a false understanding of what God and Jesus really is. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's what's led to a lot of people leaving the church. Mm-hmm. Another verse that I had was Matthew 6:14-15. And I was smart enough this time to actually have it written down. And it says, Matthew 6:14-15 says, for if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. Mm-hmm. And it sounds kind of harsh when he says it that way, but you know, it's true. Yeah. God intended it to where, like I've said already, you know, he intended it to where when he gives us something, we're meant to give it back into the world. Mm-hmm. Because when you receive a gift, right? When just for example, you find the answer to global warming, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't use that. You don't use that answer. Yeah. You don't spread it to the world. You don't tell everybody in order to help benefit the world. Then in reality, you're causing more damage than those that are actually contributing to global warming, because you have the answer, but you're not willing to give it. Mm-hmm. And that's the same way that it comes to us. We have the answers to many of life's greatest questions, and many of the questions that people ask themselves and that can't find it, whether it's through science, whether it's through other religions, or through through what they've experienced in their life. They can't find that answer, but we have that answer. We have that, we have the what's the word for it? We have that gift that we can be able to give out to others. Mm-hmm. And something that I had that really hit me was, forgiveness is choosing not to see what that individual or group did to you, but to look past what they did and still love them. Mm-hmm. At least that's my version of what forgiveness is. Yeah. It's really being able to look past what happened to you, to what happened, to how you were hurt. Because oftentimes, and in everything, we tend to see everything in the physical aspects. We tend to see things through our own eyes and not through the eyes of Christ and what God is trying, and how God sees it. If God was willing to bear the cross for us, then why can't we simply forgive someone for something insignificant or something small that they did?
Yeah.
Something, and that is, I think that's one of the biggest tactics the enemy will use against us. For us to not use one of the greatest weapons that God has given us, and to really choose to hide that away because it's simply, we prefer to keep it in our lives because it's more of a, what's the word for it? We feel like we have it more in control, so to speak. And I think that, in my honest opinion, when we hold on to that, we're slowly but surely giving the enemy a way into our lives to really wreak havoc, and do whatever he pleases. And it's so interesting to see, for me, I speak for myself. It's interesting to see like how that works, how it all just comes together, but it works so like meticulously, like it's insane how well it works together, and like how easy it is for us to look past the small details of things. And once you look past the small details of things, especially when it comes to something like this, it's like, man, like, how did I miss that? Until, you don't see it until it's too late.
Yeah.
Until you're deep in the trenches, and you're forced to open your eyes and see what's really going on. And it's just something that's crazy, it's something that's really like impacted my life from my own perspective. I don't know if you have, something that you like to share on that part.
Yeah. Forgiveness is a very big topic that I feel like a lot of people will take to address it in certain parts of their lives, but not use it to impact their entire lives and actually transform the way they think and they act and interact with other people. And not only the people that you meet in person, but the people you meet over the internet and the people that you haven't met.
I agree.
Because especially last year, with all of the racial conversations that were going on, all the political issues that were going on, it's like you could feel the tension in the air and the people's holding on to bitterness for the other side because of the pain that they're causing each other.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just like learning how to forgive the people that have been racist to you or are just racist. Like, would you be able to love that person, those people that you're holding these grudges and these angers against? Like, would you actually be able to let that go and actually confront that person and like confront him with love instead of just being full of anger and bitterness and like completely ruin a relationship or ruin that other person's growth? Because if we're trying to talk to someone about like growing, learning how to love people, et cetera, if you're coming to them with like bitterness and hatred and you're not allowing them and you're not forgiving them and you're not allowing them to have the space to grow and actually like transform and become a better person, like we're not going to be able to do anything, which is something I see a lot on social media. It's just like people being angry at each other and no one wants to come to each other with like love and compassion and forgiveness so that we're able to better understand each other and move on as a society.
I agree. And something that really hit me hard was that what you just said, it could also hinder someone's growth. When you choose not to forgive, when you hold that bitterness, that unforgiveness in your heart, which I've found out that unforgiveness is not an actual word. And I didn't know that.
Is it?
Like I was trying to type it on over text, and it wasn't like when I was looking putting up on my notes, it wasn't showing up, and I was like, what the heck? There's no word for this. But anyways, no, but it's like when you hold on to that, it's like the way that the analogy that came to me, it was like, let's just say, for example, you need glasses, right? Just say, for example, when you need a very specific prescription of glasses.
Gotcha.
But you decide you want to wear any kind of prescription there is out there.
That's the dumbest thing ever.
So you buy whatever prescription there is out there, right?
Yeah.
And you see the world through those lenses. The problem is those aren't the correct lens for you to be wearing for you to actually see clearly. And that's the same way when it comes to holding that in your, that bitterness, that hatred in your heart, because you begin to see the world from such a narrow perspective. And not only that, but it clouds it doesn't allow you to see clearly. Your clarity of seeing a situation, of seeing the anger in somebody is clouded completely, because you don't see it the way that it should. And it ends up really to a degree, as for any Christian out there, it ends up hindering. It could also, like you said, end up causing for you to hinder them from their growth, because you don't see what God's working in them. You just see what they've done to you, whether it was 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a year ago, 30 minutes ago. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You all you see is you replace what God is doing in that person, how you see that, and you replace it with the hurt and the pain that you felt. And it's so sad, because that is so evident. Like you said, in the world, you see so much tension and hatred in this world. Excuse me. And it's not, and I'm not saying that it's wrong for you to feel anger and be upset. No, we are emotional beings. That's just a part of it. It's one thing for you to feel anger towards a situation. It's another thing at how you react to it. And we actually talked about this in one of the Wednesday classes when they were talking about offenses.
Yeah.
It's one thing for you to have an offense. It's another for you to be offended. Offense is the event of something happening. Offended is the reaction to that event.
Yeah.
The way that you react determines how you actually see that situation, that particular person, or whatever it may be. So when you're not willing to actually, put your pride aside, because let's be honest, this is a pride thing. It's not even. It's not just a pain thing. It can also be a pride thing for a lot of men. A lot of men and Christians altogether. Let me just throw that out there. I'm not pointing at a specific group, but I've seen it. I've seen it evident in myself, and I've seen it evident in a lot of individuals before in my past, and it's just something that if we're not willing to see that, how will we ever truly be effective in the kingdom of God?
Yeah.
How will we ever be truly effective in the body of Christ?
Yeah.
You can't. You can't. There's no way, because you're still seeing the world from that narrow perspective. The preaching that I watched about this, he was like, let's say, for example, me and this gentleman right here, we offend each other, right? Let's say me and you offend each other, and they were both wearing glasses. He was like, from my perspective, I'm seeing something completely different from what you're seeing. But if we were to actually switch glasses, we can actually see it from each other's perspective, and actually come to an understanding of each side and what each side is going through. And from there we can actually move past it, because at the end of the day, it's when you're not willing to do that, you're cutting yourself off from ever really understanding a situation. And it could be that you're wrong in how you're seeing it, or it could be that you're right. It doesn't matter. But when you're willing to put aside all that and say, okay, what's going on? I need to understand why you feel like this. What is going on? That's where those gaps are. Those gaps are closed. Those walls come down. That divide is completely demolished, and we actually start to communicate as one. That's essentially what happened. If you look at the early church, what happened? When there was stuff going around in the early church at that time, about what some of the newly converts were talking about, and how the Gentiles need to convert and they need to circumcise and whatever. Instead of just kind of putting it aside or whatever, or agreeing with one side, they went with both sides and they tried to understand what was going on. And they came with a solution that benefited both parties in the long run. And that's that one decision is what led to Christianity spreading throughout the entire world. Because if they had hardened their hearts and kept it in that one decision, it would have been more of a religion than it would have been an actual relationship with God, and that would have been 10 times worse, really. And I just, it's crazy to really think about that. I think that the most important thing about being able to forgive is that you need to first be able to experience that from God himself through Jesus. You can't expect to give something that you haven't experienced yourself.
It's true.
You can't, you play pianos. You can't sell a piano to somebody if you've never played one before, if you've never experimented one before, because it's not going to be the same as if you actually play the piano your entire life and you love playing piano and you can they can feel the enthusiasm in your voice.
Yeah.
They can feel that love that you have in your voice for the piano, and that is what's going to pull people in. You know, when you talk about forgiveness, you need to be able to actually accept forgiveness from the Father first, because then you can say, wow, I can give this to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I can show the world what forgiveness is really about. I can show them what God is trying to tell them. You know, and it's so sad that we're not willing to go that far. As Christians, we're not even willing to go that far.
Yeah.
Because either we don't want to get offended, we don't want to get upset when we try to talk to somebody, or we've been upset and that person has triggered us and we don't want to go back and talk to them again. Yeah. I know, because I have that issue. I have that problem that I don't do that. And I know that, you know, that's something that God has really had, you know, been kind of like smacking over the head, you know, smacking me over the head for it. And it's just kind of like, wow, like, if God's willing to love me and forgive me, then I should be able to actually show that to the rest of the world. Show them what it is to truly forgive one another. Yeah. You know, that is the core message of all this, really. It's crazy to really think about it, in all honesty.
Yeah, when because I like went through like a long season where like the Lord was just talking to me about forgiveness specifically. It was like a few years ago. I don't even remember. I just remember I was young. It was like one of those things where like the Lord, you know, like when he just like presses something on your heart, like it'll just be a word. Yes. And you just like meditate on that for like weeks. Yeah. That's how it was with forgiveness. Because he was just like, really like, before you do like learn anything else, just like learn this. And I was like, okay, I'll just think about it forever. And so that's what I did. That's what I did until he was like, okay, next topic. So, that's funny. One of the biggest things that I had to learn how to do, because as someone, especially who struggles with like anxiety, you just tend to think everybody and everything is like a personal attack to you. Yeah. You're like, everybody hates me. And you're just like, you're instantly like inflicting self-hurt on yourself for no reason. And like no one's trying to do anything.
That I understand. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So it was just like learning how to put my defenses down, because I would like, you know, like I think we've all seen just moments where like someone will offend one, or we'll see someone offend another person, or someone will offend us, and then you'll instantly see their defenses go up. You're like, no, I'm not. I'm not that type of person. Like we jump to an assumption, or we jump to a conclusion that by them saying something or doing something, it means that we're a certain way, or like we're someone that we think is like not good. Yeah. Like, oh, they called me a liar. We just like lose our minds.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree.
It's just like learning how to take down those like defenses, because a lot of times the defenses are up because people have hurt you in the past, and so your body and your mind and your heart and your soul are like trying to protect itself like from being hurt again. So you're instantly like, no, and then you instantly start holding a grudge, and you instantly start being bitter and being angry with a person because you're like, no, you can't hurt me, like I refuse to be hurt. So you just keep yourself help from all that stuff. So it's like learning how to put all that down first, and like being like I don't exactly know what that other person's thinking. Like I may think with all of my mind power that I know exactly why the person did that thing, or exactly why the person said this, or exactly why blah, 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 blah. But in reality, I don't. So I agree. The best thing to do, obviously, is to ask them. But the best thing, honestly, I have personally found to be like the most peaceful thing is just literally just assume the best.
Assume the best.
Literally assume the best. Like I think people jump to like the worst conclusion way too often. Yeah. Like someone will like do something, and then they'll like, oh my God, they hate me. Like, oh my God, they're like out to get me. They want to see me dead. Like they want to ruin my life or whatnot. And it's like really just like assuming the best, like assuming just like they just didn't know. Yeah. Because honestly, that's the truth. Half the time, just people don't know that they hurt you. Yeah. Will just save you a whole ton of time, a whole ton of hurt, a whole ton of pain. It's just a lot of people underestimate the power of ignorance.
Oh my god.
And what it can do to you and what it can do to other people. So it's just like breathe. Like,
no, I agree. You know, it's something that, you know, I can relate to you on that, because I go through, you know, I've gone through the same, and I still go through the same thing a lot, you know, where I assume when someone says something to me a certain way, that they mean it this way. And then sometimes it's like a trigger to me.
It's my job to get offended.
Yeah. I'm like, bro, is he coming at me sideways? Like, what's going on? But I've learned, you know, throughout this year to be more open, to be more like actually have a conversation. Yeah. You know, I've learned that a lot, you know, to be like, hey, man, look, I don't know if you meant it this way, but this is how it came off to me, and it kind of made me feel this way. Yeah. And, you know, I was like, I just, you know, in my mind, like, I just want to throw it out there. I don't want to hang on to it, because hanging on to it is just not going to get me anywhere. Amen. You know, hanging on to it is, like I said, it's not going to get you anywhere. You can't go around carrying it with you, because all you're doing is hurting yourself. You're not hurting anyone else but yourself.
Yep.
And I've learned to really speak up, to say something if it really hits you that hard, to say, hey, look, what's going on?
Yeah.
And it's not like you go at him and be like, you offended me, you're horrible. No, you just be like, look, that hurt. And like you say, half the time they don't even realize that they hurt you. And it's but it's a two-way street, because when someone comes to you and says that, you can't really respond like, oh bro, like, what's your deal? You just get offended over this, the dumbest thing.
And then you get offended. And
yeah,
then it's just like a cycle.
It's a literal cycle. You have to be willing to understand, like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know, I came off that way, or I apologize, or, yes, I was upset, I was wrong for that, I'm sorry, stuff like that, to really actually be able to do that. Oh my gosh, that would save you so much time. That would save you so much time and so much energy, to not be so obsessed over that one little thing. That one little thing will ruin your entire day, and that's because they didn't do it. You let it happen. You let that happen. And that's something that exactly. And that's something that I've dealt with. I've been dealing with that for a year now, and God's really been hammering me on that as well.
Yeah.
But I have a question, and I have a question, and that is something that and it just kind of came to mind to me. And so the question is, can there be a false forgiveness?
Yeah.
Okay.
I 100% think that.
Okay. So what about it? How can there be a false forgiveness?
I forgive you, and then continue to act the same way you were acting when you were angry and bitter and whatnot.
Exactly.
Like, there's a difference between like, I forgive you, and then setting boundaries so that you're not maltreated, what is it, manipulated, or like hurt or abused or anything like that. Like, that's totally understandable. Yeah. But if you're like, let's say it's like a petty offense, and you're just like, I forgive you, and then you just like never talk to that person again, and you just completely just like talk bad behind them, or like in your heart you just like look at that person differently because you're like, oh, they hurt me,
exactly,
therefore they're an evil person.
Exactly. And it goes back to the same thing we talk about. You begin to see that person through that little like mirror of that one moment,
that like toilet paper roll. Exactly.
But you don't see the grand picture of things. You don't see how God has worked in that person's life, and how God has transformed that person, and that situation might have happened 3 or 4 years ago, but you're still holding on to it. And you're not seeing how God's working in that person's life. And it's so sad, because we all do it. I do it. When you say, I forgive you, but you're not willing but you're just saying it. I think that as Christians, we do that to kind of make ourselves feel better. Yeah. To say, it's
to
become,
check it off the list.
Exactly. Forgiveness has become an outward action rather than an inward action. Because you don't have to go to that person and say, I forgive you all the time. That's something that's between you and God. For you to say, I forgive you, you don't have to be in front of that person. You don't have to call that person. You don't have to talk to that person at that moment. Yeah. But for you to, when we say, oh, I forgive you, but we continue to act the same way, it's, we don't want to face the facts that we want to hold on to that. So instead of, saying, oh, I don't forgive you, I'm angry at you, just say, no, I forgive you. It's okay. I understand. Whatever. We continue to hold on to that. We really use it as an excuse to hold on to that bitterness and that hatred towards that person. And over time, that begins to build and build and build. And it literally just, over time, just takes over your heart. Yeah. The one thing you can't do is hide it. You cannot hide it, because it begins to show through your actions, through the way you talk to that person, through the way you act around that person, through the way you talk about them. It shows, and the Bible is very clear on that everything that's in you is going to show. It's going to show. Anything that you have in your life that you're not willing to give up, or you're trying to hide from everyone, from God, it's going to show no matter what. Whether God has to pull that out of you, or over time is gonna, people around you are gonna begin to see it. Yeah. But it'll show, because that is what is in your heart. That's what you're carrying in your heart, and that is, part of my testimony. Before I go on, You guys are listening in to 97.3 Oasis radio station, your one and only Spanish radio station of all of the CSRA. Thank you guys so much for joining in, for supporting us. Thank you guys for being here. You guys can also download our app on the Apple or Google Play Store. We are also connected through there, and you can also hear everything that we talk about, every program we have. You can also hear it through there as well. Again, thank you guys so much. But, part of my testimony was, I held a rather stupid, I say stupid because it's true, a rather stupid resentment and hatred and anger towards my parents for a very, very, very long time. I say up until the point that I got married, to be honest with you. I held that so deeply in my heart, Karina, and that was a very, very big lesson that, God taught me through Karina. And it wasn't until we got married that Karina kind of like called me out on that, because I said something. I remember that night too. I remember we were talking and I said something about my parents, and she goes, "Why do you have to be so negative?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" She was like, "Everything you say about your parents is always negative. There's nothing ever good." She was like, "You and your family have always talked so negatively about your parents, and I honestly thought there was something bad, but when I met them, they're fine." So I was like, "I have no idea what you guys are talking about." And I'm like, "Dang, I didn't think about that." And then she continued. She goes, just to think about it. She goes, she's like, "At the end of the day, you may be holding that unforgiveness in your heart. You may think that you're doing that to hurt them, but in reality, they're living their life. They're going on about their life, doing whatever they want.
That's true.
You're the one. It's hurting you. It's not hurting anyone else but yourself." Mm-hmm. And I sat back and I'm like, "Man, did I really do that?"
You did.
And I was like, "Man, I'm so stupid." At that moment, I was like, and then I eventually, later on, I took a moment. I was like, "God, I forgive them." I let go of whatever anger, hatred I have for them. And once I did, I felt, I kid you not, dude, and almost immediately, I have this very profound love for my parents. I absolutely love my parents. I love them to death. And that is just something that I know that I'm sorry, Karina corrected me. She says, "You kept treating them based on what they did to you in the past and didn't even realize how much they've changed." I was going to get to that part, but thank you, my love. It's just
she's acting like she doesn't have a microphone right in front of her face.
But no, that's just, again, that was essentially I hadn't seen how much my parents really had changed over the years. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I finally let go of that I finally saw how much God had changed them over the years. Mm. When I first converted, it was a horrific tension between my parents and I, and especially my mom and I, and we would always argue about the same thing. And now it's like my mom would talk to me about God as if it's nothing. And she would always she would always be like, she's like, I'm always praying for you guys. Don't worry. That God has all of this under control. God has everything. And I'm just like, man, the fact that she would never even mention that kind of stuff to me before, and now she's just talking about it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm so blind. How did I not see that? And I finally hit a point where I was like, man, I love my parents to death. And it's not even oh, I love my parents because you got to love your parents. The Bible says. No, I love my parents. I do. I have a profound love for them. They're my parents. They've taught me so much. And, I've hit a point where I am absolutely beyond blessed and grateful to have my parents and to have them, teach me everything they've taught me growing up. And, that is essentially the whole point is, we don't see how much that person has changed over time. Mm-hmm. But not only that, but what happens when you let your perspective of an individual be influenced by those around you?
Then you suck. No, I'm just kidding.
But no, that's something that's
it's
serious.
It's like you're grabbing someone else's glasses, then you're putting
exactly. and you're literally accepting them as your own because we're gullible. Let's be real here. We're gullible. We're easily influenced. When you're in a group, when you're, with people and they all see this individual the same way, you see that individual the way that they see him, because
you've only been fed one source of information. So.
Exactly. And you're not willing to go as far as actually searching more beyond it. And that was exactly how it was for me. I saw my parents through the eyes of some of my family members that my parents have done wrong to, and I never really realized how much that had, they had changed until now. And I'm just like, man, like, how crazy is it that we do that with everyone else, especially with youth in high school? Come on, you have your peer groups, you have your friends. One of your homies got a problem with somebody else, and you got a problem with that person because your homie got a problem with them. But in reality, that person has no idea what's going on. It's just your homie's just tripping out over nothing. That's plain and simple. Sometimes it is that way.
Yeah.
But instead of being the divide, be like, okay, what's going on? Why?
Let's heal.
Exactly. You feed into it by letting yourself be dragged into it. And that is where we have to stand out.
It's the truth.
That is where we can make a difference, especially as youth in high school and middle school and even in college. That's how we can make a difference. In your workplaces. Yes. That's how you can make a tremendous impact on everyone else, because you're not, you're actually stepping out of the comfort zone that you're in and saying, I don't care what you guys are saying about this person, but we need to understand his side of the story too. Because if not, then it's just it's just two sides butting heads. That's been something that it's inevitable. It's been like that for centuries. Yeah. Since the moment that man placed their feet on this planet, or God placed man on this planet. Better spoken.
I think an important thing to, like, I hate this quote because it's like cheesy, but it's so true. The quote that says hurt people, meaning if I'm hurt, I'm gonna hurt other people because of my hurt. So hurt people. Wow. So it's just like, when you're hurt by someone, it's like you have to understand that they have their own world of hurt, that they've walked through the same amount of life you have, and that they've probably gone through either the same or much more than you have. Yeah. And like being able to understand and empathize with those people, and just being like, okay, I know you did this not out of malicious intent. Like, it wasn't but it was because just like you're dealing with something, and you're like probably dealing with something that's unresolved and unhealed in your heart. Yeah. And it led you to lash out towards me. And it's like, coming from that perspective, it just like changes the way you think about people, because you're no longer, because I'm pretty sure we've all been to the point where we've been hurt ourselves, like we've had our fight with someone, or someone hurt us or whatnot, and then in turn our reaction is to hurt other people because we're just in such a negative space or a negative mindset that like we just don't know how to act, and we just like lose all of our dignity, and we're just like hurting people left and right. Like, we know how that feels. So like when someone comes up to you and like they hurt you, it's like to stop going to whatever your first instinct is, and like just be able to calm yourself down and be like, okay, what or who hurt them, and why are they acting like this? Because especially with friends, I feel like that's like the biggest thing you can do to like keep growing your relationship. Because if you just like look at it and you're just like offended, and you just like don't bother to ask why that person is like doing these things, and you don't bother to like dig deeper, and like, if they allow, of course, some people are gonna be walls, but a lot of people aren't, at least from what I've seen. It's just like learning that person and just like walking through them this season, and just walking through like their healing through what the Lord wants to do through the both of you. So. No,
I agree 100%, because over time it just becomes a constant cycle of violence. You see in this world you see in this world all the violence, the anger, the gang the gang problems that we've seen in the past, and all of that. It's all fueled, by not willing to understand why the other person is doing what they're doing.
There's a whole lack of emotional maturity.
Exactly. And it's just kind of like, and I watch a lot of movies about like, there's one movie called The Gridiron Gang, and it's actually a really, really good movie. And it talks about, troubled teens and how they found football, and how they became a family through football, and they were all from different parts of the city, and each one was a different sect, a different gang. Yeah. And at one point, two guys were butting heads really, really bad, and they hated each other. And the coach stood in the way. He was like, "Why do you hate him?" He was like, "Because blah 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 because they took my friend's life. And he said, why are you mad at him? He's like, because they took my friend's life. He was like, you see, you both lost somebody, but he's like, what's the difference now when you take his life and you take it? It's the same thing. You both lost somebody. You both have a reason to be angry. So why not? And when they finally came to that understanding, they understood that those two, literally the two guys that were literally trying to take their heads off, became brothers. At the end, one of them almost took a bullet for the other guy. And that was just something that, it was just crazy to think about. Yeah. Because it's like, that is really how we are with each other, especially within the church. You see the church and you see how the church is sometimes. And I'm not even talking about a building. I'm talking about the body of Christ. You see like a lot of different churches all have their own denomination, all have their own way of things. And because they disagree or whatever, then
it blinds them to the truth that humanity is filled with so much pain and has gone through so much. And the solution is Jesus. And they choose to linger on all of these insignificant things that really don't matter in like the long scheme of things. The long scheme of things. So I just humanity just as a whole just lacks empathy. And
exactly.
I wish people would just sit down and listen to each other, because it would just like open all of our eyes so much more, and just like give an understanding to each other that we don't have right now, just because people are so quick to hold on to their bitterness and anger, whether it be to a person or whatever it is, and they just don't want to listen. And oh my God, if like one thing that I just want to like encourage anybody, like especially myself, like my family, hopefully my future children, all these things, is just like learn how to listen, learn to be slow to speak, like what the word of the Lord says. He says, be slow to speak, be slow to anger. And it's just like learning how to hold your tongue is such a key thing to all things, because I feel like so many times like somebody will hurt us, and because we're like so quick to say something in return, like we completely miss their explanation for why they said the thing they said, and then we get offended by that, and then they get offended because we get offended, and then it's just like the argument starts instead of just like letting a person finish their statement and like trying to understand that statement in totality. It's just there's so much. It hurts.
I agree.
Because I've been with a group of people. Let's just say that I've been with a group of people, and I was just like sitting there, and it's not that they've offended me or anything, but like you're just like sitting, and then they'll just casually like mention like the fact that their parents were like drug addicts, and the fact that they like lived up in like a super messed up home, and just like all this stuff, and like I'm very internal, so I don't outwardly express like my emotions all the time or ever. But I just remember they said that, and I just like sat in silence for like 30 minutes, just like taking it in and like processing that, because I would have never known if they had not said that, because they're like the bubbliest person like I have ever met in my entire life. So I was like so taken aback, and then like I just sat and just like was sad for myself for 30 minutes, and it's just like I know. Because I think a lot of the times the church too like compares pain, and I don't think it's a healthy thing that we do. I think it's a very damaging thing that we do. Yes. And I know that like each person has experienced some sort of level of pain to that extent. Like it may not have been like my parents were drug addicts, but I know that you felt the same pain that she has. Just because we react like as humans, and as being unique little beings we are, like we react differently to different scenarios and different circumstances, whether it be mental health, whether it be something external going on in your home, whether it be something that's going on in school. Like we've all carried a significant amount of pain, and it's just like opening your heart and your mind and your ears to that, so that you're able to be empathetic with those people, and you're not quick to make an assumption, you're not quick to judge, you're not quick to just like respond in anger, you're quick to listen, and you're quick to forgive and grow with that person. I agree. It's just something that will forever transform how you interact with everyone.
Something that you said that really, I really caught my eye was you said that, we have a tendency to compare pains, and I heard this saying once, and it said that somebody can drown in 3 feet of water just like somebody can drown in 20 feet of water. There's no sense in us comparing what we've gone through in our lives with each other, because we are all meant to go through different aspects of life and experience different things in life. Because if we were all to go through the same thing through the same things in life, how in the world would we be able to have such a great impact on the world? How could we talk to people that have gone through, parents trying to sell them out for drugs, parents, drug addicts, or abusive fathers, abusive mothers? How could we even possibly be able to reach them accurately and preach, the gospel to them if we haven't gone through something like that? We can't do it. You can't speak to somebody about something that you haven't gone through, that they're going through, and expect to not only understand, but to effectively, reach to them about what they're going through.
Yeah, and especially, I feel like this is so big, especially with Christians trying to speak to other Christians who are mad at the church.
Exactly.
And who are mad at God. Like, we're so quick to be like, you're mad at God? Satanic.
No,
we're so quick to do that for no reason.
Exactly.
We're so quick to throw on the label demonic or satanic because we're not willing to sit down and listen to people's pains or what the church has done to them and what people from the church have done to them.
Exactly.
Or what supposed Christians have done to them.
Exactly.
We need to, and I've seen it, especially I feel like Damon knows about this way more than I do because he's had a lot of friends that have just been angry with church and the people from church, and very understandably so, because when I hear those stories, it's just insane. Shoot. So it's just learning how to be empathetic with those people too, with every person, because we love to crucify a person when they don't agree with the church.
See, and that's so sad, because that goes back to the same thing of us being able to understand each other. When you take someone that's angry at the church, and
more anger isn't going to do anything.
More anger and more resentment is only going to fuel their point.
You're like, oh, is your wood on fire? Here's more wood.
Yeah,
here's the wood.
Exactly. You're giving them a reason to not want to go to church.
Oh, it's not on. Let me light it on fire for you. And
exactly. And it's when you run into somebody, whether they have a grudge with the church or any situation like that, you have to be willing to understand. You don't know the situation. You don't know the person. You have to be willing to understand. You have to be willing to really, say, okay, what is going on? Why are you feeling this way?
And have patience.
Exactly. Because not everybody is going to come to in one single conversation and give their life to Christ. And no, that's not how it works.
Or just heal, unless the Lord really wants to work that night.
Yes, unless, that is something that has to be God and nothing else. We can't do that. It's not within our rights, and we don't have a right to do that. So it's really sad when it gets to that point that we just, we allow the enemy to create that divide, because that is exactly one ginormous tactic that the enemy uses. He creates that divide between us. And not only between us and each other, but between us and God. Yeah. Because the same way that we see each other, sometimes we tend to see God the same way. Yeah. That's why you see people that hate God so much, because they're what they've experienced, what they've seen how people treat them. They begin to think that God is the same way, because that person is supposed to be representing Christ, but that person did something to them, and because that person is associated with God, you automatically hate God because you think that God is responsible for that. Yeah, that's the same thing. You're eating Pringles, right? You're eating Pringles and you throw up. While you're eating Pringles, you're not gonna want to eat Pringles again. Yeah, Pringles makes you sick, I know because it happened to me as a kid. I ate Pringles, I threw up, and I was like, I don't want Pringles again.
I was like, Pringles suck.
Yeah, and every time I eat Pringles or think about it, I get nauseous. And that's the same way with us and God, and with us and other people. We're not, we have to be willing to understand that, no one will ever be able to represent God more than Jesus did.
And that's on period.
That is the literal. That is what it's meant for. Jesus was meant to be the ultimate example.
No, seriously though.
When we go out into the world, we're not trying to be like, I'm like Jesus. We're trying to say, I am nothing like him, but here's Jesus, and here is why. Look at him, not me. I'm not worthy of this. Yeah. But I feel like that is the plan. God is so. He's a genius. He is an absolute genius.
His ways are higher than
because
mine.
This is a very strategic business move, really, if you think about it. How can you appeal to a certain population if you don't have that, that individual that can represent what that population has gone through? right? So to speak.
Yeah.
So when you look at the body of Christ and you see that the body of Christ is made up of individuals that have been broken, have been beaten down, have been, castrated by society, that have made mistakes, have done wrong, committed murders, whatever. When you see individuals that go from that and they transform their life to God, and each one is something different, that's where you begin to attract people. I mean, like, wow, like you used to be out in the corner selling drugs and doing whatever, but now you're here with the Lord. I was like, it's so amazing. It's like, it's purely genius. That is why Jesus did what he did. He chose his disciples very strategically for that reason. He chose the outcasts, the ones that were outcasted by society. What the Pharisees considered as sinners, he came and said, I'm choosing you as my own. That's crazy. Yeah. That's how Jesus was able to have such a dramatic impact on the world.
Yeah.
Because you see that the apostles, none of them were perfect. Every one of them had issues. Every single one of them had issues.
We all have issues.
Exactly. But Jesus still chose them and used them in such a powerful way. And God used them literally to start this movement.
Yeah.
This movement that's lasted for thousands of years.
Which is important to note.
Exactly.
Because with all of their mistakes, like, God used them in such a powerful way. And it's just such an example of like God's forgiveness towards us. And it's just like literally only his goodness and mercy that we're able to do anything. Because it's just like, as Christians, it's our responsibility to be like, don't look at us, look at Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, don't look at us, look at Jesus.
I
and
agree.
Yet Jesus made it so that he put himself in our hearts. Like, our hearts are his home. So it's like people have to look at us as the example.
Wow.
And it's just like, that's insane. Because we're ultra mega messed up.
Exactly. And it's not meant for us to be like, yes, I'm like Jesus, but no, it's like look at what Jesus is doing through me. It's the whole purpose, the whole core message is for people to see what God is doing through us, not what we're trying to do with God or through God.
And more importantly, to see like that the reason Jesus was sent down and the reason Jesus puts himself through us and puts us through like such a broken vessel sometimes. And it's just like, just let other people see that he can use you the same way. Like, you may be broken right now. You may be in your hurting. You may be in your pain. But like, Jesus wants to use that. Jesus wants that.
Exactly.
He wants to place himself inside a broken vessel and he wants to make it pure again.
Exactly.
And it's just like mind blowing because it's just like all he wants you to see is primarily the first thing he wants you to see is the fact that he's giving you goodness and mercy and he's giving you forgiveness.
I agree.
Like on top of just like being a good person, like the first thing through the example of putting himself in us broken vessels, like we've received the goodness and mercy to be people and carriers of his presence and ministers of his glory. And like, he does miracles through us and he does this through us, like, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just like, we're that broken vessel. Like, we're testimonies of Jesus's goodness and mercy.
It's
like,
crazy.
Constantly. So that's what other people will see when they see you representing Jesus.
And you want to know the most beautiful part was that instead of Jesus didn't just come down and said, here I am, crucify me. No, Jesus literally came down and chose to live the life of a human because he wanted to see and understand what it is that we go through.
Yeah.
He not only he was tempted for 40 days. The man didn't eat or drink anything, which we know by human standards, it's absolutely impossible.
Don't do it.
Please don't do it. Please do not do it.
I could discourage you from one thing.
That's the one thing we're telling you not to do. But
I've literally seen stories of pastors trying to do that and dying. So
no, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. He's the only literal man on this planet in all of existence that could have ever been able to pull that off. And that's because it's Jesus. Come on, that was Jesus. He was tempted in every area, in every little thing that each and every single one of us go through individually. He was tempted in every single part of that.
So crazy.
All in order so that he can understand. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. He endured being literally humiliated and embarrassed, stripped naked and beaten in front of everybody when he literally had the power to do whatever he wanted to.
Slap us off.
Exactly. He could have done Thanos. You're gone. He could have done, bro. You're gone. You're dust.
Everybody's like, "What's that from?"
Oh, gee, but like for real, like it's crazy. It's crazy to think about that. He endured all that. Jesus was embarrassed. He was offended. He was hurt by his own creation.
Literally done the most dirty.
Exactly. The one by the very people that he created, that came from him.
No, but I think such an important quote, out of the many important quotes that Jesus says, that is, forgive them for they know not what they're doing.
That is such a powerful statement.
Like if we would just do that, because I know Jesus was talking to God the Father specifically then, but if we were to take that instruction for ourselves and forgive people for they know not what they're doing, like especially regards to people doing some silly stuff that aren't Christians and are doing a bunch of satanic things, like they just don't know what they're doing. It's an ignorance. I think people assume that when something happens and it appears satanic or demonic, they're instantly quick to assume that they know that God exists and they've seen Jesus and they chose Satan. I don't think they know that.
No,
I think it's just ignorance that they've said, okay, you hurt me, like the church has hurt me, I'm gonna now try and hurt you guys back, and unknowingly they commit a sin that's like, and
it's so funny because it's not funny. I'm sorry.
It's so funny.
No, but I've seen we were watching the Passion for Christ. Right, the Passion of Christ.
Oh my God, that movie freaked me out when I was in 7th grade.
That movie is such a powerful movie.
No, hold up, before we move on. That traumatized me in 7th grade. The person that played Satan, I had nightmares for about 2 weeks.
Okay, that was horrified. Okay. It was a little out there, but I remember once in the beginning scene. God, Eden and I were watching it, and that's when the snake comes up and he stomps on the snake, and Kanye was like, "Ay, me asustó." It was so funny.
I can't do it, Lord.
But what really impacted me was in the middle of them, literally, she's laughing. In the middle of them crucifying him, he was telling God to forgive them.
No, yeah, that's insane. That would not be the thought on my mind.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm like, screw these people.
No, but that's what I'm saying, because God saw so far. He saw the enemy. He didn't see them. Yeah. He saw they were manipulated. He saw them with love. Mm-hmm. That and I'm gonna be honest. When I was watching that movie, I was like,
yeah, that's literally how it is.
If I was there, I'd backhand all of them.
Really, like every time, at least for me, every time I've watched like one of those movies, I'm like, how could they? But like, I definitely probably would have been one of those people if I was in that time period.
Yeah, exactly. When
like, you're influenced, there was a very few select people that were actually following Jesus during that time.
Exactly. And when you allow and that goes back to how you allow society to influence the way you see God. Mm-hmm. In the same way, in high school, you allow your peers to influence the way you see God. You allow the image that society is trying to implant in our brains of who God is influence how way we see God and the way we treat God. Yeah. And it's so sad because we all do it. Even Christians, we all do it.
We do.
And if we were to actually stop for a second and look at God and say, wow, you were willing to forgive us. Mm-hmm. You were willing to forgive us for what we did when we deserved this punishment. That's the most amazing thing that we could have ever been given to us. It's so amazing to think about that.
Yeah. This is a thought that now makes sense. I was like wondering why I was thinking about this earlier. But now that we've said all those things, it now makes sense. But I was thinking about do you remember when we were like, don't expect yourself to be perfect?
Yeah.
Now it makes sense why I was thinking about that, because to expect yourself to be perfect is to expect to never grow. And it's just like you're not going to be able to see all the things that God has forgiven you. You're not going to be able to see all the errors that you have in yourself because you believe that God instantly made you perfect the second you were a Christian or after whatever happened or whatever encounter you had with God. So it's just like understanding the forgiveness towards yourself from God. Yeah. It's just like such a key pivotal point to like everything.
Yeah, I agree.
You said it earlier. You were like, how can we preach something that we don't understand?
Exactly.
Like, how can we give the message of forgiveness if we don't ourselves understand it? And if we expect us to be perfect, if we expect at some point we're going to reach it, we're going to stop growing. That's the second we stop growing, because we assume that there's nothing else wrong with us. Like God has done it all. Like I'm at my peak, and you're not. You're never going to be at your peak until you die and you go to heaven. So it's just like always. I think this is what I feel like. This is like the biggest thing with humility, because the Lord in the word humility in the amplified version, they don't just say like humility, because you know all the other things say humility, and humility can mean so many things for so many different people. But specifically in the amplified version, it talks about how humility is looking at yourself realistically, and I feel like that is like such a key thing to like being a Christian. I feel like people are like, don't go to therapy, or like don't do this, like don't like self-evaluate or blah 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 blah, because like Jesus has it all. Like he does. Like I don't doubt that he has it all at all. But like I agree. To be completely blind of yourself and be blind of your errors is to put yourself at a pedestal that you're not on. So it's just like you have to be realistic with yourself and like be able to see your errors and see your imperfections, and definitely not expect perfection out of yourself, because you're never going to reach it while you're on this earth. Exactly. You can strive for it. You're not going to reach it. And to put that expectation on yourself is to set yourself up for failure, basically. I agree. And that is something that I personally struggled with myself for a very, very, very long time. Right. To try to be so perfect, for God, to the point that you begin to not only not see what's wrong with you, but you also begin to not want to accept the fact that there is something wrong with you. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but when you begin to get to that point, you're not willing to accept correction from God. Yeah. And the moment that God corrects us, that's when we get offended. Yeah. And we say, how dare you? I'm doing all this, but you're calling me out on this. When the whole time God is like, I'm not doing this so that you can get offended. I'm not calling you out and saying you're stupid. I'm saying you need to change this, because this is something that needs to change in your life. No, and if you're like open, if you truly approach God with an open heart and an open mind about letting yourself be corrected, I promise you will do it in the most gentle way possible. Humanly possible, exactly. Oh my God. When I tell you, like, every time he comes to me with some certain error that I'm doing or something that needs to be corrected in my heart and the habits, the way that I think, because let's talk about how everything starts in the mind. Yeah. It's just like I'll go through like a week or two where it's just like I'm struggling and I'm like, I don't know why my week is so horrible. And like I finally go to God with it, because Lord knows it takes me a while to go to God because I'm embarrassed. But when I go to him, it's just like he presents it in such a gentle way that it's not to like chastise me or like embarrass or shame me. He's like, this is something that needs to be corrected, and I want to see you grow from this so that you're able to reflect me better. Yeah. And it's just like so relieving to not be like, I'm going to spank you. Yeah. And it's so funny because I went through a period of that myself, and I remember I kept asking, I was like, God, why am I going through this? Why am I seeing all this that's wrong with me? Like, what is going on? Yeah. Like, why? Why is this happening? And I remember the answer that he gave me was, he was like, I'm not showing you this so that to condemn you or to laugh at you. To laugh at you. He was like, away. Exactly. He was like, I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this to help you. Yeah. What was meant to be like that one little area that I was looking at, I was like, oh my gosh. She was like, if you were to just focus on me and give it to me, you will see what I can do with it. Mm-hmm. But when we're so trapped in our own minds and understanding, oh my gosh, you're showing me this, there's something wrong with me. Ew. And we're not willing to actually go to him and let him fight our battles. Mm. That is something that will have a tremendous impact on the rest of our lives. Mm. And for me, the last thing was, and something that I've learned that was something extremely powerful about Karina and that I love so much about her is that, no matter how many mistakes that I've made in our marriage, she forgave me for every single one of them, every time, even though it took her a second, even though it took a lot of yelling sometimes, I'm not gonna lie. Her face, let's be real here, it took me a long time to understand. I remember asking God one day, I was like, why is she doing this? I was like, why is she forgiving me? And I remember God was like, because she's not seeing you the way you're seeing yourself. That's T. She's seeing you the way that I see you. He's like, if only you were to do the same, everything would be different. The call out. And I was like, Literally though. I feel like, especially you and I can both relate with this. It's just like trying to see yourself as anything but the way you see yourself. Exactly. Because you're like so hard on yourself, as am I. Exactly. I get it. It's just, I don't know why. I'm waiting for the answer, Lord. But like, it's so hard to take yourself out of your own mindset when it comes to the view of yourself, because you're so quick to like chastise yourself and
Exactly.
like shame and humiliate yourself. Like you are your biggest enemy sometimes.
Exactly.
And it's so aggravating.
Exactly. And it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, I had this thought in my mind. Oh, and I remember it was recently. I was going through a rough, and I was just overwhelmed, and I was frustrated, and I was just talking to Karina, and she was like, I remember she told me, she said, I stopped fighting that battle with you a long time ago. She was like, I realized that he's the one that fights my battles. And I'm like, she was like, you need to realize that who is fighting your battles. You need to know who's fighting your battles. I'm like, I'm like, no. It's like, dang, man, I'm just getting slapped around. But and that's the truth. We have to know and understand who is fighting our battles. Who is there with us, whether we're facing somebody that's really hard to talk to sometimes, to get along with, or whether it's our own family member or whatever it may be in our lives that has hindered us to that point of unforgiveness, whether it's ourselves or anyone else in our lives. When we're willing to step back and say, I know that you're the one that's fighting my battles, not me, and you're willing to actually let go, because a huge part of forgiveness is not just saying the forgiveness part, but a tremendous part of forgiveness is letting go. It's the act of letting go. It's not about forgetting, because let's be honest, we will never forget sometimes some of the things that we've gone through, and it's not meant for us to forget. It's meant, God doesn't want us to forget and suppress what we've gone through in our lives. He wants us to remember that as a testimony that we use to help others. That is a huge difference. We let go. Yeah. You heard forgive but never forget. Yes, to an extent. You forgive and you don't forget, but you don't hold on to it either. Karina says, we have to forgive ourselves just as Jesus does and accept his correction instead of holding on to our own condemnation. I agree 100%. That goes back to the same thing we talked about 2 weeks ago about loving ourselves. We can't expect to love anyone else if we're not willing to love ourselves.
Yeah. It's like an unspoken rule.
Exactly. and it's something that goes silent.
As you love yourself.
Exactly.
But he like says that as a standard, and I feel like we've gone to the point in society with like social media and all that stuff. Like it's very easy to become a self-hater.
Exactly.
It's like so easy to fall into that category and just learning how to hate yourself.
Exactly. How can you again, we go back to what I said in the beginning. How can you forgive somebody when you're not willing to forgive yourself?
How you do anything?
Exactly. When you forgive yourself, God opens your eyes and you begin to see things through his perspective. Because let's be real here. The whole purpose of this entire thing, of what we're doing here, is that we're looking at the world through God's lenses, not ours. God set the lenses in place. That was what Jesus did on the cross and what he did for us and what he's been doing all, since the moment that, he put humanity on this earth.
Yeah.
That is the whole point, that is the whole point of, of where we're supposed to look at the rest of the world through is through God's lenses. Yeah. And again, my beautiful wife says, we hold the mirror of the world when looking at ourselves instead of holding the mirror of Jesus, which in turn is the Word of God. And that's amazing to think about. The Word of God is the literal mirror that you can use to look at yourself. And that's literally every word that's spoken in that. And that in the Bible is spoken to us. Yep. Directly. Not indirectly, directly to us. Directly.
He's like, you
to
are
us.
this. And we're like, no.
Exactly. God's like, I love you. No, you don't. I love you. No, you don't.
It's like that fake humility, which is why I was being specific with the humility thing, because there's a fake humility.
Exactly. Exactly.
That comes in and it's like, oh yeah, humility is like downplaying yourself so bad that you feel like worthless trash. And I'm just like, wait a second.
No.
That's not what the Lord of the Lord says.
No, that's but that is something that the enemy does use, especially now in the youth. I feel like that's the dangerous part, is that the enemy has learned to adapt to every situation, especially with the youth now. He uses every tactic out there. Yeah. It's common psychology. The best way to defeat your enemy is to know your enemy. There's no other way. And that goes vice versa. In order for us to defeat the enemy in our lives, the struggle in our lives, we have to know who the enemy is. We have to know what the struggle is in our lives that needs to be defeated.
And how he's operating.
And how he operates. And I'm not saying, guys, please don't go online and start looking up all of this things about Satan or anything like. Gosh, please do not do that.
Go to the Lord.
Go to the Lord. That is that's a bad idea. Please don't ever do that. Don't ever do that, because that
a mess.
You have to be very spiritually prepared to be able to confront.
You have to be ready to battle.
Exactly. You have to be able to confront and battle the things that you will confront when you start looking at stuff like this. But the Word of God says it very clear. It is the prime instructions of not only knowing your enemy, but knowing God Himself. Mm-hmm. And that is something that is so powerful. That is the beauty of that.
Yep.
So, for me, what I have for tonight, because I know we kind of went over tonight, but what I have tonight for you guys is, like, we have to learn to forgive. Truly, truly forgive. Not just say it, but truly. Exactly. Let go. Forgive ourselves.
Let's go through the list.
Exactly. The first.
Forgive ourselves.
Exactly.
Forgive other people. Forgive your friends, your family, people on the internet. Forgive everyone, y'all. Like, it's not I'll forgive this one person, because I feel this. It happens too many times where I see it where they talk about forgiveness, and you're like, oh yeah, it's only about this one person. No, it's about every single person in your life and every single person you'll continue to encounter in the future, y'all. Like, this isn't something to take lightheartedly and just be like, yeah, one person. Like, you have to do it with everybody. Your worst enemy, that group of people that you were so angry with for whatever it is. Like, you have to learn how to forgive in every single aspect of your life.
I have one thing that just kind of came to mind that I feel like, you guys, we all should do and take some time out to do. Take a piece of paper, write down everything you dislike about yourself, everything that you hate about yourself, anything and everything, and be real with yourself. Don't be like, oh, there's nothing I hate about myself. I think I'm Gucci. I'm good. No, be real with yourself. This something that's between you and God. No one else. I can't help you. JB can't help you. The only one that can help you is God. Write it down on a piece of paper. Everything that you dislike, everything that you don't like about yourself. Take that piece of paper, fold it up, and spiritually envision yourself placing it in God's hands. And afterwards, let God fill you with how He sees you. Mm-hmm. That is the best way to start this whole process. Forgiveness is a process. It's not just something that comes to and from one day to another we forgive everybody and we know how it feels. No, it's a process that we need to learn and we need to seek out with God and through God. Mm-hmm. So that's just one recommendation that I can have, that I have for you guys. And that's something that I know I need to do for myself, and I've really been working on that as well, but
self-esteem.
Yeah. Learn to really look at yourself the way that God sees you. Yeah. And the rest will follow through very, very easily. You'll see yourself forgiving others and loving others in ways you never thought you could. And understanding others. Be open-minded. Be willing to see what that person can be going through. Remember that the Bible says that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and rulers of darkness of this world. We need to really understand that. That is a prime verse that has been used for years.
And yet it's never been understood.
It's never been understood. It's never been like dissected and really think about that.
Yeah, because people will still go out and be like, yeah, people want to see you fall. Like, no, people don't. It's the darkness and the principalities that go behind it. Like, stop blaming people. Exactly.
Once we begin to see others through not only through God's eyes, but seeing the situation, seeing what that individual is doing, and knowing that that is the enemy trying to get us to react, we begin to react. We begin to actually act and react in a completely different way.
The holiest of ways.
Exactly. So I would highly recommend that for you guys. In all honesty, that is the biggest thing that you guys could do. You guys are listening in to 97.3 WMFJ, Oasis radio station, your one and only Spanish radio station of all of the CSRA guys. Guys, if you if you guys want to join in, we have our youth chapels at 7:30 on every single Wednesdays. Yeah. So please join in. If you don't feel comfortable coming in person, we do have our Zoom. You can. If you want to know the Zoom information, you can always message us on the on our Instagram. I'm not saying the Facebook because I will never be able to pronounce that correctly.
I couldn't even tell you either.
On our Instagram, XV Youth. Thank you. On our Instagram, XV Youth, and we will more than love to send you the information and everything that you may need to join the class. Again, please join us on Sundays. We have Sunday service as well. You can join us on Facebook Live or in
11
person.
11 o'clock a.m.
11 o'clock a.m. sharp. Nothing less, nothing more.
Really?
Or you're not coming in. I'm just kidding.
We'll lock the door.
But no, please feel free. This Saturday, I believe we are having a youth service.
Yep.
Youth service at 5 o'clock. Guys, please do not miss out on the blessing that you could have, that God may have for you. Don't miss out on it. It could be a tremendous blessing for you and your families. Also, please feel free to join in every Tuesdays. We also have other programs Monday through Thursdays, in the mornings, at nights, besides Wednesdays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays. Now that I think about it, feel free to join. We have very powerful topics we talk about. Again, thank you guys so much for joining in, and we'll see you next time.
We also have a Good Friday service.
I apologize. I forgot about that. Yes, we do. I knew there was something going on this Friday, but I forgot. Yep, we have our Good Friday service. At what time does it start, JB?
7:30.
At 7. Boo. This will be the last time y'all see me. But no, you said 7:30?
Yeah, p.m.
So definitely p.m., please, not a.m. p.m. Yeah. You'll be very disappointed you show up here at 7:30 in the morning.
Not a single person.
But no, feel free to join us. Again, it could be a tremendous, tremendous blessing for you guys. Again, thank you guys so much for joining in. We love you guys. And until next time.
Happy Resurrection Week.
Happy Resurrection Week.
Jesus.
Yay. That sounded so monotone.